The crowd of teenagers snickered as they advanced, tossing pebbles and jeering at the lone German shepherd chained by the school fence. They had no clue that this dog, seemingly harmless in the shade, was trained to do far more than bark. He was a seasoned canine with a history of bringing down fleeing suspects, a four-legged officer with a nose for trouble. And that trouble was about to hit them head-on. Jake Larson, a quiet 11th grader new to Pinewood High, had been asked to watch his uncle's canine dog, Rex, for the afternoon. Uncle Steve, a decorated police officer, had been called into an unexpected shift. With nowhere else to take the dog, Jake ended up tying Rex near the athletic field while he finished detention. What Jake didn't realize was that a group of bullies had been itching for a new target, someone or something to push around. They spotted the chained shepherd, saw the uncertainty in Jake's eyes, and pounced on the opportunity. At first, the taunting was minor, a few catcalls, paper wads tossed from a distance. Rex barely flinched, trained to ignore harmless distractions. But the bullies grew bolder, stepping closer, hurling insults at both Jake and the dog. One particularly loud teen, Trevor, thought it'd be hilarious to jab the canine with a stick. The rest cheered him on, having no idea that Rex was no ordinary pet. Beneath that calm exterior lay a keen intelligence and honed instincts prepared to protect civilians, especially his temporary handler, Jake. Meanwhile, Jake could only watch from a few steps away, heart pounding. He knew Rex was disciplined, but also capable of swift, decisive action if he perceived a threat. Jake pleaded with the bullies to leave them alone, but Trevor just sneered, brandishing his stick like a weapon. A small crowd formed, smelling drama. Jake's palms went clammy. Should he call for help? Could he de-escalate this on his own? His words fell on deaf ears. Trevor struck again, this time aiming the stick toward Rex's face. In a split second, the dog's training kicked in, ears pinned, muscles tensed, eyes narrowed. A low, menacing growl rolled from his chest, the kind that sent chills down a suspect's spine. The bullies froze for a heartbeat, just enough time for Rex to act. They had picked on the wrong dog, and their taunts were about to backfire spectacularly. Jake's heart hammered in his chest as Rex let out that chilling growl. Ever since Jake was a kid, he'd known his uncle's German shepherd was special. Uncle Steve loved to boast about Rex's exploits in the K9 unit. Trained in search and rescue, drug detection, and suspect apprehension, Rex wasn't just some family pet. He was a working officer, with nerves of steel and teeth to match. And now those teeth were on full display, bared in a snarl that made the bullies pause mid-step. Trevor, the ringleader, stared at the dog, his bravado wobbling. He tightened his grip on the stick as though it could protect him if the dog attacked. Around them, the small crowd of onlookers fell silent, uncertain whether to egg on the confrontation or run for cover. Jake could practically feel the tension crackling in the afternoon heat. Jake swallowed hard, stepping closer to Rex. He hoped his presence would calm the dog, remind him this was just a bunch of dumb teenagers, not actual criminals. Softly, he said, "Rex, stand down," his voice shaking. Uncle Steve had taught him a few basic commands, but Jake's mind was spinning too fast to recall the exact training phrase for disengage. One of Trevor's friends, a tall kid named Marshall, sneered. "Your dogs all bark, no bite," he taunted, though he didn't sound entirely convinced himself. A second kid picked up a rock, hefting it in his palm as if considering whether to toss it. The tension escalated with each second, the bullies trying to save face while confronted with a snarl they hadn't counted on. Jake could see the chain pulling taut against Rex's collar. The dog's powerful body was coiled like a spring, locked in a standoff with Trevor. Every muscle in Rex's legs trembled, ready to pounce if necessary. Jake knew that if Trevor advanced again, Rex might interpret it as a genuine threat, and there'd be no going back. The last thing Jake wanted was to explain to Uncle Steve, or the police department, why Rex had chomped down on a teenager. "Hey," Jake called, his voice firmer this time. "Just back off, okay? He's not a regular dog. He's K9 trained." He emphasized the words K9 trained, hoping it would click in their heads. Trevor's face tightened. "You think I'm scared of some mutt?" he spat, though he took a half step back. For a moment, it looked like he might walk away. But then some inner bravado, or maybe the pressure of his watching peers, made him lunge forward, brandishing the stick at Rex's snout. "Get lost," he shouted. That was all the provocation Rex needed. The dog lunged forward, chain rattling as he snapped at the wooden stick. With a terrifyingly quick motion, he clamped his jaws around it, splintering the wood in seconds. Trevor stumbled backward, mouth agape, as Rex spit out jagged pieces. A ripple of gasps rushed through the crowd. Suddenly, the harmless dog had shown just how lethal he could be. The group of bullies instinctively scattered, but Trevor, caught in his own shock, froze. Rex planted his paws, letting out another spine-tingling growl that echoed across the schoolyard. Jake's stomach twisted. If Rex decided Trevor was a real threat, the canine instincts would take over completely. An unstoppable charge, a takedown. That was how Uncle Steve had trained him for criminals on the run. Shaking off his panic, Jake grabbed the leash. "Rex, heel," he ordered, putting as much authority into his voice as he could muster. For a heartbeat, Rex stayed locked onto Trevor, ears flattened. Then, as if recognizing Jake's command, the dog stepped back, chest still heaving with adrenaline. The chain jangled with each tense movement. Trevor released a shaky exhale. His friends hovered a dozen paces away, eyes wide. One of them called, "Dude, forget this, let's go," clearly spooked by the dog's ferocity. But Trevor's pride wouldn't let him back down so easily. He rounded on Jake with a mix of fear and anger. "You almost had your dog attack me," he shouted, voice cracking at the edges. Jake shook his head, swallowing his own fear. "You were the one hitting him with a stick," he shot back, stunned by his own boldness. He was only protecting himself and me. If you don't want trouble, just leave him alone. Before Trevor could retort, a stern voice cut through the tension. "What's going on here?" Everyone turned to see Mr. Caldwell, the school's athletic coach, striding across the lawn with swift authority. A tall man with broad shoulders, he surveyed the scene, a splintered stick on the ground, Trevor backed up against a tree, and a German shepherd baring his teeth. Jake silently thanked whatever forces had brought Mr. Caldwell. The coach spotted Jake standing near the dog, recognized the bully's defensive postures, and put two and two together. "You kids messing with a police dog," he barked, raising an eyebrow. Trevor and his friends shrank, not sure how to spin the story. "It's not our fault," one kid blurted. "That dog's crazy." Coach Caldwell's eyes narrowed. "I don't know about that. I know this dog. Officer Steve's partner, right?" he said, turning to Jake. Jake nodded, relief washing over him. Coach Caldwell had likely crossed paths with Uncle Steve during community events. Trevor floundered, trying to regain composure. "He attacked us." Jake pointed at the shattered stick. "He broke that after Trevor tried to poke him in the face," he said, voice steady. "He's a trained canine. You can't just mess with him." The coach let out a disgruntled sigh. "All of you, come with me," he ordered, motioning to the bullies. "We'll see what the principal has to say about harassing an animal on school grounds. And you," he turned to Jake, tone softening. "Can you get Rex calm? Don't want any more trouble." Jake nodded, reaching for Rex's collar. The dog was still keyed up, panting hard, but at least he'd stopped growling. "Easy, boy," Jake whispered, gently stroking the thick fur behind Rex's ears. He could feel the tension slowly melting from Rex's body, though the dog's eyes remained vigilant. In a tight cluster, the bullies followed Coach Caldwell toward the main building. Trevor dragged his feet, throwing resentful glares at Jake over his shoulder. Jake took a moment to breathe, heart still pounding with adrenaline. Rex sat down, ears twitching as if checking for further threats. A few curious onlookers lingered, whispering among themselves. One or two gave Jake a thumbs up, impressed by the spectacle they'd just witnessed. But Jake's hands shook as he reached for his phone, contemplating whether to text Uncle Steve about the incident. Before he could, the volunteer who'd been running detention duty approached with wide eyes, stammering, "Are you okay?" "I saw what happened from a distance," Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah, thanks to Rex." He glanced at the dog, who now cocked his head at Jake's voice, looking more like the loyal companion he was at home than the fearsome canine who just splintered a stick in seconds. Still, Jake knew this wasn't over. The principal would want statements, and the bullies might hold a grudge. More pressing, Uncle Steve was due to pick up Rex soon, and Jake had to figure out how to explain everything without sounding like he'd lost control. Because while Rex had followed his training, it was clear the dog would do whatever it took to protect Jake. That might be a comfort if real criminals appeared, but in the messy world of high school bullies, it could spell trouble. With a final pat on Rex's flank, Jake rose to follow the group to the principal's office. One thing was certain. From now on, word would spread that messing with Jake Larson's dog meant messing with a highly trained, no-nonsense K9, and that was a line no one wanted to cross again. Jake's legs felt like jelly as he trailed behind Coach Caldwell and the group of bullies toward the principal's office. Rex padded beside him, alert, but no longer on the verge of attack. The stares from other students in the hallway made Jake's skin prickle. Rumors traveled fast at Pinewood High, and the story of a K9 dog confronting troublemakers would only fuel more chatter. Whether that was good or bad remained to be seen. Mr. Peterson, the principal, was a stocky man with a perpetually furrowed brow. He looked up from a stack of paperwork, eyebrows shooting upward when he saw the German Shepherd in his office doorway. "What in the world?" Coach Caldwell cleared his throat. "Sir, we've had an incident out by the athletic field. A group of students was provoking this police-trained dog. Jake here was trying to keep the peace, but it got tense." Jake steadied himself, breathing through the lingering adrenaline. Trevor and his friends stood in a huddle, shoulders hunched, trying to look both innocent and defiant. One of them still held the broken remains of the stick, which only made them look guiltier. Mr. Peterson's gaze flicked between the battered stick, the shaken bullies, and the watchful dog. "How about you all take a seat?" Mr. Peterson said, motioning to the chairs, "and someone explain exactly what happened." His tone wasn't angry yet, just firm and demanding clarity. Trevor's friend Marshall blurted out, "The dog attacked us. We were just minding our own business." "Oh, cut it out," Coach Caldwell interrupted, arms folded across his broad chest. "I saw enough to know that's not the whole truth." Jake swallowed, stepping forward. He gently guided Rex to sit at his side. "I was finishing up detention," he began, voice low but steady. "Rex is my uncle's K9 partner. I tied him up near the fence so he wouldn't bother anyone. Then Trevor and his buddies showed up, started throwing stuff, waving a stick at him. Trevor glared daggers. We were just messing around. How were we supposed to know the dog was, like, some special cop dog?" Mr. Peterson raised a hand to silence them, looking to Jake again. "Here's that correct. They taunted and threatened the dog first." "Yes," Jake confirmed. "Rex only growled when Trevor tried poking him. He snapped the stick, but he didn't hurt anyone." Marshall piped up. "The stupid mutt nearly bit us." But even he couldn't fully commit to the lie, his voice cracking nervously. The principal leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "And you, young man," he said, addressing Trevor, "felt it was appropriate to intimidate an animal on school grounds with a weapon." "It was just a stick," Trevor muttered, cheeks reddening. Mr. Peterson glanced at Coach Caldwell, who nodded in grim agreement. Sighing, the principal swiveled his gaze over the group. "I'm inclined to believe Jake's version of events. A K9 dog doesn't typically start aggression unless it senses a real threat. That's what these dogs are trained for." He paused, eyes settling on the bullies. "So I'm disappointed. This kind of behavior is unacceptable, and we'll have to consider disciplinary action." At this, the bullies squirmed, exchanging uneasy looks. Trevor's bravado deflated like a punctured balloon. They probably expected a stern warning or a scolding, not an actual disciplinary mark that might reach their parents or even the authorities. Meanwhile, Jake exhaled slowly, relief mingling with concern. He was glad Rex wouldn't be blamed, but the thought of trouble following him and possibly his uncle still loomed. Coach Caldwell cleared his throat, shifting the tension in the room. "Principal Peterson, I can keep an eye on these boys for now. But maybe it's best if Jake takes the dog home. Less chance of further incidents." The principal nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, that's sensible. Jake, I assume your uncle will pick up the dog shortly." "Yes, sir," Jake replied. "He's off duty in an hour." "I can call him to come earlier if you like." Mr. Peterson looked at the group. "I'll need statements from everyone. But for now, Trevor, Marshall, and the rest of you, wait outside. Coach will accompany you. Jake, remain here until your uncle arrives." "Understand." No one argued. The bullies slunk out, heads down and muttering curses under their breath. As they filed past Rex, the dog gave a quiet rumble of warning, prompting them to quicken their pace. Coach Caldwell followed, making sure they didn't bolt from the hallway. Jake sank into a seat across from Mr. Peterson's desk, petting Rex's head absently. The principal massaged his temple. "Son, your uncle's a respected officer in this town. I'm sure you know that bringing a trained canine onto school property could be problematic." Jake's stomach flipped. I'm sorry, sir. It was a last-minute thing. My uncle got called in, and I couldn't leave Rex alone at home. I thought tying him up away from most students was safe." Mr. Peterson softened a fraction. "I understand, but in the future, please clear it with me or another administrator. This time, I'll let it slide given the circumstances. But I hope you realize how quickly a situation can escalate." Jake nodded, swallowing guilt. "Yes, sir, I do." After a brief silence, the principal added, "You're not in trouble, Jake. Those bullies are... Though I'd recommend you stay out of sight until your uncle arrives, to avoid any more showdowns." He cast a glance at Rexon, who was panting calmly now. "My secretary can let you wait in the staff lounge if you like." "That'd be great," Jake murmured. He scratched behind Rex's ears, an unspoken thank you for the dog's quiet loyalty. Together, they left the principal's office, escorted by a kindly administrative aide. As they passed the front office windows, Jake spotted Trevor and his crew slumping on a hallway bench, faces sullen. Their day, it seemed, was about to get a whole lot worse. The staff lounge was empty, with a worn couch and a half-functional vending machine. Jake sank onto the couch, letting Rex rest at his feet. The initial adrenaline rush had burned off, leaving him feeling drained. He pulled out his phone and texted Uncle Steve. "Need you at school ASAP. Kinda urgent. Will explain." Within minutes, the phone buzzed. Uncle Steve's reply read, "On my way. Everything okay?" Jake typed back, "We're fine. Some bullies tried messing with Rex. He's a hero. But come soon." Tucking his phone away, Jake looked down at the dog, who returned his gaze with calm brown eyes. It amazed Jake that just 10 minutes ago, this same creature had lunged with terrifying force. Yet now, Rex was the epitome of serenity, as if saying, "I've got your back, kid. Everything's under control." Before long, footsteps echoed in the corridor, and Uncle Steve appeared, still in uniform. His gaze darted to Rex, then Jake, relief washing over his features. "You two okay?" he asked, crossing the room with quick strides. Jake stood, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Yeah," he said softly, recounting the incident in terse sentences, the bullies, the stick, Rex's snap, the principal's reaction. Steve's expression hardened when he heard how far things had gone. "That's not the first time punks have underestimated a K9, Steve muttered, kneeling to check Rex's collar. "Good job, boy," he praised, ruffling the dog's fur. Rex wagged his tail, soaking up the affectionate tone. At that moment, Mr. Peterson stepped in, giving a polite nod. "Officer Larson, I take it?" "Yes, sir," Steve replied, rising and shaking the principal's hand. "Thank you for contacting me. I appreciate the school's understanding. We just want to ensure no one's hurt and that rules are respected," Mr. Peterson said. Jake explained the circumstances. "The main issue is these bullies antagonizing the dog. We'll handle disciplinary measures." Uncle Steve's face tightened. "If they'd done this to Rex on the street, I'd have arrested them for harassment of a police animal. But I suppose school discipline will do." He looked at Jake, eyes gentling. "You did all right, kid. You used the commands I taught you, yeah?" Jake nodded, a shy smile tugging at his lips. "Sort of. Mostly I just tried to keep him from hurting anyone." With a faint chuckle, Steve said, "That's the right call. He's trained for far worse. Glad you kept him calm." Mr. Peterson gestured toward the hallway. "You're free to go, but one of my staff will escort you to avoid any more conflicts. If we need more details, I'll call." "Thank you, sir." Jake breathed more easily now that they had permission to leave. He tugged on Rex's leash gently, and the dog followed with composed obedience, though he glanced back warily, as if half expecting those troublemakers to pop up again. Within minutes, they were outside in the fresh air. Late afternoon sunlight streamed across the school parking lot, and a breeze ruffled Rex's fur. Jake felt a sense of release, a leftover swirl of tension slowly unraveling. Uncle Steve put a reassuring hand on his nephew's shoulder. "You did good," he said. "Now let's head home. I'll have to file a brief report, but that's routine." His voice dropped lower. "If those bullies ever give you trouble again, you let me know, Rex or no Rex." Jake laughed, half in relief, half in gratitude. "I think they learned their lesson," he said, imagining Trevor's wide-eyed look when Rex snapped that stick. "They picked on the wrong dog." Uncle Steve chuckled. "Yeah, they sure did." They climbed into Steve's patrol SUV, Jake in the passenger seat, Rex on the back seat, ready to return to more peaceful surroundings. As the engine roared to life, Jake gazed at the school building. He suspected that come Monday, he might be known as the kid with the badass cop dog. Not exactly how he'd envisioned blending into a new school, but it was better than being just another anonymous face in the crowd. And if this encounter dissuaded future harassment, maybe that was a win both for him and for Rex. Because bullies had a way of lurking around every corner, but a well-trained canine partner could turn the tables faster than any insult or thrown rock. In the rearview mirror, Jake caught sight of Rex's calm expression and felt a rush of pride. They were a team, forged in an unexpected showdown, and no bully would soon forget it. Back at home, Jake peeled off his backpack and slumped onto the living room sofa, exhausted. Rex, ever alert, padded around the house to reacquaint himself with familiar scents before settling at Jake's feet. Uncle Steve stood at the kitchen counter, sorting through paperwork and occasionally shooting a worried glance toward his nephew. "You sure you're okay?" Steve asked, setting down a stack of forms. "You had a rough day." Jake nodded, rubbing his eyes. "I'm fine, just drained." He paused, then looked down at Rex, who was now watching him with those calm brown eyes. "If he hadn't been there," Jake trailed off, not wanting to imagine how badly those bullies might have escalated things. Uncle Steve followed Jake's gaze. "Rex is a partner, on duty or off," he said quietly. "But remember, he'll respond to perceived threats. That can be a double-edged sword if people don't realize he's K9 trained." Jake swallowed. "Yeah, it almost got out of hand." A flicker of guilt passed through him. Had he put Rex in a risky position by bringing him to school? If so, the alternative was leaving the dog alone or unprotected. He pushed the thought aside, telling himself it was an unavoidable situation. No one could have predicted those bullies would be so reckless. Over the next few days, a hush of rumor followed Jake at school. The bullies who'd provoked Rex received suspensions, and in the small social ecosystem of Pinewood High, that was big news. Trevor, their ringleader, seemed to have vanished from campus, presumably at home, facing the wrath of unhappy parents. Some kids cast Jake sidelong glances in the hallway, half fearful, half impressed. A few even approached him to ask, "Is it true your dog snapped a stick in half? Did he, almost attack Trevor?" Jake responded with measured caution. "Rex is a trained police dog," he'd explain. "He only acts if people threaten him, that's all." He tried not to boast, but inside he felt a small, strange satisfaction. No one had teased or shoved him once since the incident. For a kid who was new to town, that felt like a protective barrier, albeit one built on intimidation. Despite the newfound respite from bullying, Jake couldn't shake a lingering concern. Rex was still in the prime of his career as a K9, and any bad incident might compromise that. If the bullies had been hurt, if Trevor had so much as a scratch from a dog bite, the department could have launched an investigation. Uncle Steve might face repercussions too. The more Jake thought about it, the more he realized they'd escaped a real crisis by mere inches. One afternoon, about a week after the confrontation, Jake arrived home from school to find Uncle Steve checking over Rex's gear, harness, collar, protective vest. "We got a call," he said, voice edged with adrenaline. "House burglary in progress. Rex and I are heading out." Jake nodded, stepping aside to let them pass. In a flurry of movement, man and dog geared up and headed for the patrol SUV. Jake watched them drive off with a pang of anxiety. He'd always known Rex's work involved risk, but somehow, seeing the dog in uniform made the memory of that schoolyard incident real again. Rex was no ordinary pet. He was part of a bigger, dangerous world. A few hours later, The sun had begun to dip below the horizon when Uncle Steve and Rex finally returned. Their entrance was quieter than usual, the dog's paws shuffling across the floor. Jake looked up from his homework, concern immediately sparked by Steve's grim expression. "What happened?" Jake asked, standing quickly. He noticed Rex seemed subdued, tail low, as though the day had taken a toll on him. Steve let out a heavy breath. "We caught the suspect. He tried to run, but Rex took him down. During the scuffle, Rex got a bit roughed up. He gestured to a small bandage on the dog's flank, taped neatly in place. It's just a minor cut, but he needs rest." Jake's chest tightened. Kneeling down, he gently stroked Rex's fur near the bandage. The dog gave a soft whine, leaning into Jake's touch. "At least you're okay," Jake whispered, wincing at the thought of the dog grappling with a real criminal. "Bet the suspect regretted messing with him." Uncle Steve gave a brief nod. "I sure did." He set aside his belt and radio, then took a seat at the table, face etched with fatigue. "This job's tough on him, and me. But we do it because that's what we're trained for." Jake sensed an undercurrent in his uncle's tone, as though more weighed on his mind than just that day's operation. "You sound worried," he observed. Steve sighed. "Yeah, a little. Between his age and small injuries piling up, I wonder how much longer Rex can keep going. Don't get me wrong, he's still in great shape, but canines have a retirement age too, and any serious incident might accelerate that." A knot formed in Jake's stomach. He hadn't considered that Rex, unstoppable as he seemed, might be nearing the twilight of his service. "You think he'll retire soon?" "I can't say for sure. Maybe a year or two left in the field if all goes well. But I can't ignore the signs." Uncle Steve rubbed his eyes, the day's stress clear. "At least if he retires, he can stay with us, or maybe with me permanently. That's the usual arrangement." Part of Jake felt relief at the thought. No more dangerous pursuits, no more bulletproof vests and scuffles with criminals. But another part recognized the dog loved his work, thrived on it. Sitting around at home, even with affection, might not satisfy that powerful drive. As the days stretched into weeks, the tension of the schoolyard incident gradually faded from daily conversation, though the memory of it still gave Jake a strange sense of caution whenever he walked past the fence where it happened. Rex continued his duties with the department, responding to calls with unwavering skill. But each time he returned, Jake couldn't shake the worry that an unexpected confrontation could cost him everything. One evening, Jake's phone buzzed unexpectedly. The screen showed a number he didn't recognize. Answering, he heard a familiar voice. Trevor. For a moment, Jake almost ended the call in shock. Why was Trevor contacting him? "Hey," Trevor's tone was guarded. "I got your number from a friend. Look, I just wanted to, say sorry. That day with your dog, I was being an idiot." Jake blinked in surprise, words momentarily failing him. He paced across the living room, glancing at Rex, who dozed contentedly on a rug. "What made you call me now?" Trevor sighed, his bravado noticeably absent. "Let's just say my folks weren't happy about the suspension. They drilled into me how dangerous it could have been, and the principal threatened a record. I guess I realized that if your dog had really gone off, I'd be messed up. So, sorry." A mix of emotions washed over Jake. Relief, lingering resentment, cautious acceptance. "Thanks," he said simply, unsure what else to add. "I guess we're all lucky it didn't get worse." "Yeah," Trevor admitted. "Anyway, take care. And, tell your dog I said thanks for not biting my head off." Jake almost laughed. The mental image of Rex receiving a personal apology was surreal. "I will," he replied. As he hung up, he exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. If Trevor, once so arrogant, could make peace, maybe things were indeed settling down. He crossed the room, kneeling by Rex's side. The dog blinked awake, offering a lazy wag of the tail. "That was Trevor," Jake said softly, scratching behind Rex's ears. "He says he's sorry." Rex responded by yawning, muzzle curling in what Jake liked to imagine was a doggy smirk. For the first time since the confrontation, Jake felt a genuine sense of closure. He gave Rex's collar an affectionate rattle. "You really are something, you know? The wrong dog to pick on, for sure." The dog nuzzled Jake's hand, content to be the quiet hero that no one could push around. And in that shared moment, boy and dog side by side, Jake realized how deep their bond ran. Not just as nephew and uncle's K9, but as friends who had each other's backs in a world that could turn hostile at a moment's notice. A crisp wind swept through the neighborhood the following week, rattling the last of the autumn leaves. As Jake pedaled his bike home from school, he replayed the unexpected phone call from Trevor in his mind. A small measure of relief had settled over him. Trevor's apology suggested that the old tension might finally be laid to rest. Still, a thread of anxiety wove through his thoughts. He couldn't erase how close things had come to disaster that day with Rex. What if something like that happened again, with even worse consequences? Jake sighed and turned into his driveway, noticing Uncle Steve's patrol SUV parked out front. Inside, he found Steve rummaging through a kitchen cabinet, looking uncharacteristically flustered. Rex sat obediently nearby, ears perked as if on standby for instructions. "Hey, everything okay?" Jake asked, removing his backpack. Uncle Steve let out a breath. "Sort of. I got pulled into a last-minute overtime shift tonight. There's a big event downtown, and they need extra K9 units for crowd control. I was hoping to catch a break, but no luck." He shook his head. "I'll be gone until late. Could you keep an eye on Rex?" "Yeah, sure," Jake answered without hesitation. "I'll just do my homework and hang with him. Is he not going with you?" "Not tonight," Steve replied, sliding a few dog toys into a small duffel. "There's a rotation schedule for the K9s. Plus, the chief wants him rested in case something big goes down tomorrow. So it's just me patrolling on foot." Jake glanced at Rex, who appeared disappointed not to be included. "No problem. He's good company," Jake assured, giving the dog a soft pat on the side. Even though the run-in with the bullies still weighed on his mind, he had grown to appreciate Rex's steady presence more than ever. Steve nodded gratefully. "I'll leave extra dog food out. Plus, you know the routine. He's been a bit stiff in his back leg since that burglary takedown, so make sure he doesn't roughhouse too much." Jake agreed, mentally noting the instructions. As Steve headed for the door, he paused. "Oh, and keep the door locked. If you go out, bring your keys. We've had a spike in petty thefts lately." He gave a mock salute and dashed off, leaving Jake and Rex alone. Hours slipped by uneventfully. Jake finished his homework, while Rex dozed in the living room, occasionally stretching or shifting positions to ease his sore leg. At around 8 p.m., Jake realized he was starving. He rummaged through the fridge, settling on leftover chicken and some microwavable veggies. Rex perked up at the smell of food, but a gentle hand signal told him to wait. Once Jake finished eating, he let Rex have a few small bites from his bowl. The evening was calm, the hum of the heater lulling them both into a sense of security. Then, around 9:30, Jake heard a dull thump outside, like someone bumping into a trash bin or a fence post. Rex's ears went rigid, his entire body tensing as he cocked his head toward the front window. Jake's pulse quickened. Probably just raccoons or a stray cat, he told himself. Still, Uncle Steve's warning about petty theft hung in his memory. He stood, and Rex was at his side in an instant, tail lowered in a vigilant stance. The dog's instincts were on full alert. Cautiously, Jake approached the front door, peering through the peephole. Darkness shrouded the yard, and he couldn't see much. Another soft rustle came from the side of the house, near the garage. "Stay," Jake whispered, placing a hand on Rex's collar. The dog trembled with pent-up focus, waiting for a command. Jake flicked off the living room lights, hoping to get a better view through the window without glare. There, under the faint glow of a street lamp, he glimpsed a figure skulking along the fence. His heart lurched. This wasn't a raccoon, definitely a person. The figure bent down, fiddling with something near the garage door. Are they trying to break in? A jolt of fear lanced through Jake, followed by an unexpected surge of adrenaline. What should I do? Uncle Steve was on duty, but probably downtown. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911, voice trembling as he reported a suspicious person on the property. The operator stayed on the line, asking for details. Jake described the suspect's approximate height and clothing. Meanwhile, Rex emitted a low growl, eyes fixed on the door. The operator advised Jake to remain inside, keep quiet and wait for the police. "They'll be there soon," she promised, her tone calm yet urgent. Every second felt like an hour. Through the window, Jake saw the intruder try to pry open a side window. A metallic scrape echoed in the night air. Rex's hackles rose, and he began pacing, clearly wanting to intervene. Jake swallowed hard, torn between calling out and staying silent. He didn't want to spook the intruder and cause a confrontation inside the house. But letting the guy roam free outside was terrifying too. Finally, distant sirens cut through the stillness. The intruder froze, head snapping up. Evidently deciding the risk was too high, he bolted toward the street. Jake hurried to the front window just in time to see the figure dash away, disappearing behind a neighbor's hedge. The wail of sirens grew louder, lights flashing at the end of the block. Jake let out a shaky breath, tension flooding out of him. He gave Rex a reassuring pat. "It's okay," he whispered, though his own heart still raced. Within moments, 2 patrol cars pulled up, headlights sweeping across the yard. Officers emerged, flashlights in hand, canvassing the area. Jake cracked the front door open, keeping Rex on a short leash as he waved them over. A tall officer approached, hand resting on his holstered weapon. "You the one who called 911? Yes, Jake stammered, trying to steady his voice. "I saw someone trying to get into the garage." He ran that way when he heard the sirens. The officer nodded, shining his flashlight around. "We'll try to track him. You and the dog stay put," he signaled to another officer, who jogged off toward the neighbor's hedge. Jake and Rex stepped back inside, locking the door. As minutes ticked by, more backup arrived, combing the neighborhood. Jake glimpsed flickers of flashlights through the windows, accompanied by the crackle of radios. He exhaled, sinking onto the couch, while Rex stood guard near the door, tail high. If the intruder had forced his way inside, Jake shuddered at the thought. Rex might have acted on pure canine training, potentially leading to a dangerous encounter. In a twisted sense, the break-in reminded Jake yet again that Rex wasn't a typical dog. He was a capable protector, but also a living weapon under the right circumstances. Thank God the guy ran. After a tense quarter hour, a firm knock sounded. "Police," came a muffled voice. Jake peeked through the peephole before letting the officer in. The man looked disappointed. "No luck catching him yet. Probably hopped fences until he found a way out of the neighborhood. We'll keep patrolling." "You did the right thing, calling us instead of trying to confront him yourself." Jake nodded, relief mingling with an odd sense of frustration. The intruder had vanished, leaving behind only a bent window frame as evidence. At least no one was hurt, and the damage was minimal. The officer took a quick statement and left, promising the station would file an official report. By then, Jake's heartbeat had finally slowed, though his nerves still felt frayed. As quiet settled over the house, he realized how dark it was outside, well past 10 p.m. He glanced at Rex, who eyed him intently, as if reading Jake's unease. "You're a real guardian," Jake murmured, kneeling to press his forehead gently against the dog's. Rex exhaled a low woof, his version of a comforting sigh. Before long, the tension caught up with Jake's exhausted mind. He flipped off the remaining lights, double-checked the locks, and headed to his bedroom. Rex followed closely, refusing to be far from Jake's side after the scare. Lying in bed, Jake stared at the ceiling, replaying the night's events. In a single month, you fend off bullies at school, then nearly face a burglar here. Drained though he was, a cautious sense of gratitude settled over him. Rex is always there, always ready. Even if the dog's official service days might be numbered, as Steve had hinted, Jake realized that the bond they shared was beyond any job description. Because Rex wasn't just the wrong dog for bullies to pick on, he was also the right dog for protecting this home and the people in it. Quietly, Jake reached down to pat the space beside his bed. Rex climbed up, settling his chin on Jake's knee with a content huff. In that calm moment, Boy and K9 drifted into a guarded peace, knowing the world outside could flare up with danger at any moment, but together, they'd face whatever came next. A few days after the attempted break-in, Uncle Steve could sense that Jake was more subdued than usual. Each time Rex trotted over to nudge him, Jake smiled faintly, but an undercurrent of worry lingered in his gaze. Sitting down at the kitchen table, Steve decided it was time for a talk. He found Jake there, absently scrolling through his phone while Rex curled at his feet. "Kiddo," Steve began, taking a seat across from him, "you've been through a lot lately. Everything okay?" Jake looked up, hesitating. He glanced at Rex, who returned the look with calm expectation. "I'm fine. Just thinking," he said, trying to sound casual. But the slump of his shoulders betrayed him. "About the school incident or the burglar?" Steve pressed gently, hands folded on the table. "Both," Jake shrugged. "Both, I guess." His voice lowered. "It's like, in just a few weeks, I've seen how intense life can get with a canine around. Between bullies messing with him and that thief who almost broke in, I feel like trouble's always lurking." Steve sighed, nodding. "Yeah, it can feel that way sometimes. Rex is trained to handle threats, but that training also means we encounter a lot of them." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "It's okay to be spooked. I sometimes get spooked too." Jake's eyes widened in surprise. "You do?" "Of course," Steve admitted, leaning back in his chair. "I've been on calls where Rex has to go into dark buildings, searching for armed suspects. My heart races every time. But fear keeps us sharp. It's not a bad thing, as long as we don't let it paralyze us." Jake absorbed that in silence, then mustered the courage to ask something that had been gnawing at him. "So, you mentioned he might be nearing retirement. What happens if he stops working? Will we keep him, or does he go somewhere else?" A brief shadow flickered in Steve's eyes. "Typically, the handler gets first choice to adopt, and yes, that'd be me. I'd absolutely keep him. I'm not letting him go anywhere else." He reached down to ruffle Rex's ears, and the dog's tail thumped against the floor. "He might miss the adrenaline rush, but we'll find ways to keep him active." That answer comforted Jake more than he realized it would. The idea of losing Rex, whether to a new family or the job itself, had weighed heavily on him. "So, you're basically prepared for him to be a full-time house dog whenever it happens?" "Yeah," Steve confirmed. "He's earned that rest. In the meantime, we take it day by day." Just then, the doorbell rang, startling them both. Rex sprang to his feet, ears perked, stepping between Jake and the door with protective instinct. A low grumble hummed in his throat until Steve placed a calming hand on his harness. "Easy, boy," he murmured, exchanging a glance with Jake. Jake peered through the window only to see a UPS driver holding a small package. Relief washed over him, followed by a twinge of embarrassment at how jumpy they both were. Steve opened the door, accepted the package, and thanked the driver. Rex observed the entire exchange with keen eyes, not fully relaxing until the truck rumbled away. "That's the new chew toy I ordered for Rex," Steve explained, shaking his head with a half smile. "Hopefully he'll prefer it over your sneakers." Jake gave a weak laugh. "I guess that's a sign we're all on edge." He watched as Steve set the package on the kitchen counter. "What if," he ventured hesitantly, "I learn some more advanced commands, so if something happens again, I can handle him better?" He recalled that day at school, how he'd scrambled to remember the right words for disengage or heal. Steve's expression brightened. "That's not a bad idea. Normally, advanced canine training is for certified handlers, but I can show you some basics." He paused, eyes crinkling in thought. "Rex already trusts you, so it shouldn't be too hard. But we need to be careful. His training is meant for real threats." "Right," Jake said, a determined spark flickering. "I just want to be prepared, you know? So next time, I don't panic." Steve nodded in approval. "All right. We'll start with reinforcing the stay and heal commands under stress. Then maybe we'll practice stand down, though that's usually a high-level directive." After dinner, the two set about a mini training session in the backyard. The sun sank behind the fence, draping the lawn in dusky shadows. Jake felt his nerves flutter as Steve handed him the leash. "Keep your voice steady," Steve coached, "and stand tall. Rex will read your body language as much as your words." Jake inhaled, then said firmly, "Rex, heel." The dog trotted to his left side, eyes alert. Feeling a surge of pride, Jake walked a few paces, the leash slack. "Rexine, stay." He halted, and the dog immediately paused, posture poised but calm. So far, so good. "Now for the trickier part," Steve said, retrieving a bite sleeve from a storage bin. He recognizes this from training. Normally, we use it to simulate suspect apprehension. I won't let him get carried away, but watch how he reacts under mild provocation. He slid the padded sleeve on his arm and moved a few yards away, turning to face the dog. Jake swallowed, bracing himself. Steve feigned a threatening stance, brandishing the sleeve as if challenging Rex. The dog's ears snapped upright, a low growl vibrating in his chest. Jake stiffened. "Rex, stand down," he commanded. For an agonizing second, Rex appeared ready to lunge, muscles taut, teeth bared. But then he flicked his gaze to Jake, reading the calm but firm stance, and backed off with a frustrated huff. "Good boy," Steve praised, stepping forward to pat the dog's flank. "Jake, that was spot on. You kept your composure." And Rex responded, "That's exactly what we want." Jake let out the breath he'd been holding. A rush of relief and pride welled up inside him. In that instant, he felt more connected to Rex's world, a place of black and white commands, high stakes, and unwavering loyalty. They practiced a few more times until the dusk grew thick. Jake's adrenaline eventually mellowed into a satisfying glow. He'd gotten a glimpse of the power behind Rex's training and the precision required to harness it. The memory of the bullies at school flashed through his mind, and he realized how easily that situation could have turned catastrophic if not for a few crucial commands and Rex's discipline. "Thanks for showing me this," he told Steve as they guided Rex indoors. "I feel better, like I won't freeze up if something happens." Steve ruffled Jake's hair affectionately. "You did great. Just remember, it's a responsibility. Canines aren't toys. If you give him the wrong command or at the wrong time, it could cause chaos." Jake nodded solemnly, a new respect settling in. "I get it." For a moment, he imagined the day Rex eventually retired. Would that discipline fade, replaced by a simpler life of toys and naps? Or would the dog always carry that intense readiness, just waiting for a signal? That night, after showering and finishing homework, Jake lay in bed listening to the soft thumps of Rex moving about the house. The dog stopped at his doorway, poking his head in as if to say goodnight. Jake smiled, beckoning him closer. "Come on," he whispered. Rex padded inside, lying near the foot of the bed, ears perked for any sign of disturbance. Staring at the ceiling, Jake thought about how swiftly bullies, burglars' danger could upend life. But with every challenge, Rex remained steadfast, a guardian who demanded clear commands and unwavering calm. They had discovered the consequences of messing with the wrong dog. But more importantly, Jake had learned what it meant to be the right partner, offering Rex clarity, guidance, and trust. As he drifted off, the rhythmic cadence of Rex's breathing lulled him into a sense of peace. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, another school day, another potential curveball. But now Jake felt ready to face it, thanks to a quiet bond forged between a determined teenager and a highly trained K9 officer. And that partnership, he realized, was bulletproof in its own humble way. Jake woke the next morning to the sound of Rex padding around the hallway. The sun had barely crested the horizon, and a soft amber glow filtered through the blinds. Stretching, he realized he actually felt rested for the first time in weeks. Between the break-in scare and the lingering drama at school, restful sleep had been hard to come by. But last night's training session with Uncle Steve must have calmed his nerves. Stifling a yawn, Jake pulled on a sweatshirt and headed to the kitchen, where he found his uncle sipping coffee and reading the local paper. Rex sat quietly at Steve's feet, tail swishing whenever Jake appeared. "Morning," Jake mumbled, pouring himself some juice. Uncle Steve glanced up. "Morning. You sleep okay?" "Yeah, for once," Jake said, giving Rex a quick pat. He noticed the newspaper's front page. Spike in local burglaries continues. It featured a grainy photo of a suspect's getaway taken from a neighbor's security camera. Jake's stomach clenched. "They never caught that guy who tried our garage, right?" Steve shook his head, brow creasing. "Not yet. The department's on high alert, though. We suspect it might be the same group behind multiple break-ins." Jake nodded, swallowing uneasily. He reached for the cereal box, pushing away the memory of the intruder's silhouette by the fence. "At least we have Rex," he said softly. "It helps, knowing he's here." The day moved along as usual. Jake's school hours were largely uneventful, though he did catch glimpses of some of Trevor's old crew, Marshall in particular, lurking by the lockers. Their gazes avoided Jake, as if they wanted no further confrontation after the fiasco with Rex. Jake couldn't help but feel relieved. The last thing he wanted was more drama. After final bell, he hopped on his bike and rode home, mentally going over the advanced commands he'd practiced. Maybe after homework, he'd do another quick session with Rex. The more prepared we are, the better, he thought. To his surprise, Uncle Steve's SUV was already parked in the driveway when he arrived. Usually, Steve was out on patrol until dinner time. Setting his bike aside, Jake hurried inside, only to find the house buzzing with anxious energy. Steve was on the phone, pacing the living room. Rex sat nearby, ears pricked in alert mode. "Yeah, okay," Steve was saying, voice clipped. "We'll gear up and be there in an hour." He ended the call, raking a hand through his short hair. Spotting Jake, he managed a tight smile. "Hey kid, how was school?" Jake blinked. "Fine. What's going on?" Steve exhaled. "We got intel on the burglary ring. A lead suggests they might be targeting a commercial warehouse by the old railroad tracks. They need K9 units tonight. Rex and I got assigned." His eyes flicked to the dog. "It's a big operation, multiple suspects, could be dangerous." Jake's stomach knotted. "So you're going into a stakeout or something?" "More like a preemptive sweep," Steve explained. "We'll search the perimeter, see if they show up. If they do, we'll be ready." He kept his tone matter-of-fact, but Jake caught the underlying tension in his uncle's posture. Swallowing his worry, Jake nodded. "You guys be careful." A ghost of a grin touched Steve's lips. "Always." He headed for the back room to grab Rex's vest and gear. The dog followed with a wagging tail, though his eyes showed a focused glint, clearly sensing an important job ahead. Jake could only watch, uneasy but also proud. This was what Rex was trained for, after all. Less than an hour later, Steve and Rex departed in the patrol SUV, leaving Jake alone in the quiet house. He tried distracting himself with homework, but every siren-like sound from the street made his heart skip a beat. Would something go wrong? As the clock ticked on, the sense of waiting gnawed at him. By 9 p.m., Jake's nerves were frayed. He flipped on the TV, half listening to a rerun of an old sitcom, phone clutched in his hand in case Steve texted. The night stretched into deeper darkness, each minute punctuated by Jake's anxious glances at the front window. Finally, around 10:30, a pair of headlights swept across the driveway. Jake jumped up, peeking through the blinds. Relief coursed through him as he recognized Uncle Steve's SUV. Hurrying to the door, he yanked it open and immediately felt a jolt of fear. Steve stood there, an exhausted slump in his posture, while a limp Rex leaned against his leg. One of the dog's ears was nicked, blood staining a corner of his fur. "Oh God," Jake breathed, stepping aside to let them in. "Is he hurt bad?" Steve shook his head, though his expression was grim. "A scuffle with a suspect. He got a small cut on the ear, plus some bruising. It's not life-threatening, but he's shaken. Vet gave him a quick check on site. We'll need to watch him overnight." Jake sank to his knees as soon as they cleared the doorway, gently placing a hand on Rex's side. The dog's eyes fluttered in weariness, and he let out a low whine. "You brave boy," Jake murmured, voice trembling. Steve shut the door, exhaling hard. "He did his job. The perp tried scaling a fence. Rex took him down, but the guy had a metal rod, managed to strike Rex. Could have been worse." Jake felt his throat tighten. That one sentence carried so much. Could have been worse. If the suspect had aimed differently, or if Rex hadn't reacted fast enough, the dog could be seriously injured, or worse. "Let me get some towels," he offered, hurrying to the bathroom. Grabbing a clean cloth, he returned and knelt beside Rex, dabbing at the dried blood around the ear. The dog blinked at Jake, tail thumping weakly. Uncle Steve crouched down, gently removing Rex's vest. "He needs rest. I'll file my report later. Right now, I want to make sure he's comfortable." Together, they coaxed Rex to lie on a soft blanket in the living room. Jake fetched water, and Steve checked the dog's ear more closely, reapplying a disinfectant the department vet had provided. Rex flinched but didn't resist, trusting their touch. Once Rex was settled, Steve slumped into the armchair, letting out a shaky sigh. "They caught the entire ring of burglars," he said quietly. "Rex helped corner the last guy. Solid police work. But seeing him get hurt like that..." He trailed off, voice tight. Jake nodded, heart pounding with sympathy. "He's the best, Uncle Steve. He just pushes himself so hard." A faint, sad smile curved Steve's lips. "Yeah, that's what he's trained to do. But I can't help thinking, maybe it's time we schedule a thorough checkup. He's been in a bunch of tense situations lately. If he's starting to show wear, I don't want him forced into another brutal fight." Jake's stomach churned. The thought of Rex's retirement had hovered in the back of his mind, but seeing him injured now made it feel urgent and real. "You mean, like an early retirement?" "Possibly," Steve admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "We'll see what the department vet says. If it's just a scratch, fine. But if it's part of a pattern, too many close calls in a short span, he might need to step down before something truly catastrophic happens." A flicker of resistance flared in Jake. "But he loves being a K9, doesn't he?" "He's always so focused on the job." "He does," Steve agreed. "But I can't let that overshadow his well-being. I care about him, not just as an officer, but as part of the family." Jake glanced at Rex, who had drifted into a restless sleep. The dog's body trembled slightly, as if replaying the night's chase in his dreams. A knot formed in Jake's chest. On one hand, he didn't want to see Rex get harmed again. On the other, imagining the dog's drive to serve, cut short by forced retirement, felt like pulling a fish out of water. Uncle Steve must have read Jake's conflicted expression, because he reached out to squeeze his nephew's shoulder. "No decisions yet. We'll gather info, see how he recovers. No matter what, we'll keep him safe." Jake nodded, tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. "He's our guardian," he whispered. "But maybe we need to guard him now." A solemn hush settled over them. The living room lamp cast soft shadows across the walls, illuminating the battered figure of Rex on the blanket. Boy, uncle, and dog, 3 soldiers in a war against unexpected threats. And in that quiet moment, Jake realized that while bullies had been the least of their worries, the real battles lay in the line of duty that Rex walked every day. If he couldn't be safe in his own job, the question became, was it truly worth it to risk everything, even if Rex was the best K9 around? With gentle care, they dimmed the lights and stayed by Rex's side, determined to see him through the night's discomfort. And as the minutes ticked by, Jake couldn't help but wonder if fate was pushing them toward a new chapter, one where picking on the wrong dog would be a thing of the past, simply because Rex's days in uniform might be nearing their end. The morning sun brought little relief. Jake woke from a fitful sleep on the couch, stiff from having dozed off while watching over Rex. The German shepherd still lay on the floor, dozing restlessly, occasionally shifting with a low whimper. Uncle Steve, stirring from an armchair, rubbed his eyes and checked on the dog's bandaged ear. "How's he doing?" Jake asked quietly, eyes filled with concern. Steve knelt and carefully stroked Rex's shoulder. "He's been dozing on and off. Doesn't look like he's in severe pain, but he's definitely not his usual self." The dog nudged Steve's hand as if to say he was aware. "Just worn out. We'll head to the department vet for a follow-up today. If all's good, maybe he can heal up in a few days." "But I still want a full exam." Jake nodded, swallowing a lump in his throat. "You think he'll be okay to keep working?" A sigh escaped Steve. "Let's see what the vet says. Physically, maybe. But there's more to consider. He's had a lot of near misses lately. I don't want him..." His voice caught, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. "He's family, Jake. I can't let him get badly hurt on my watch." Jake placed a hand on Rex's side, feeling the dog's steady but slightly labored breathing. Every breath reminded him of the intense world Rex inhabited, one filled with burglars, bullies, and punishing takedowns. "I get it," he whispered. I don't want him to be unhappy if he retires." Steve forced a sad smile. "He might miss the job, but dogs also adapt. And he's got us." Later that day, they loaded Rex, moving slowly to avoid jostling his sore body, into the patrol SUV. The ride to the department vet clinic felt unusually long. Jake stared out the window, trying not to dwell on worst-case scenarios, but the thought of the dog's career ending nagged at him. Rex seemed calm enough, head resting on Jake's lap, eyes half closed. At the clinic, a friendly veterinary technician ushered them into an exam room. "We'll do some x-rays just to be safe," she said, patting Rex gently. "He's a tough boy, but we want to rule out anything more serious than a bruised muscle and that ear wound." Jake and Steve waited outside, pacing the hallway. Police department staff, used to seeing canine officers come and go, occasionally stopped to ask if Rex was all right. Each time, Steve replied with the same subdued explanation. He got hurt on a call. Hoping it's nothing major. There was an air of empathy, but also a quiet understanding. This was the reality of a working dog's life. Finally, the vet emerged, pulling off latex gloves. No fractures in the leg or shoulder. A week or so of rest and limited strenuous activity. She offered a small smile. "He's lucky. Another blow an inch lower could have caused more severe harm." Steve exhaled, relief mingled with lingering tension. "That's good news, so physically he'll recover." "Yes," the vet confirmed. Then she paused, eyeing Steve. "But you mentioned you've had multiple calls with close calls. You might want to consider his overall stress level. Some canines handle it for years. Others reach a point where retirement is kinder, even if they can still physically work." Jake's heart sank, despite the vet's kind tone. Uncle Steve nodded, expression conflicted. "We'll talk about it," he said quietly. They thanked her and guided Rex back to the SUV, the dog moving with a slow, stiff gait. On the ride home, silence stretched until Jake mustered the courage to speak. "So, does that mean you're gonna retire him?" Steve's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I'll speak to my captain. We'll see what they recommend. The final call is partly mine, partly the department's. If they feel he's still crucial, they might want him on certain tasks only. But if I sense he's not 100%, I'll push for retirement." Jake studied Rex, who panted softly, leaning against Jake's arm. "Would that be so bad?" he ventured, half hating the question. "I mean, if it keeps him safe." Steve shook his head, voice low. "Not bad at all, just different. We have to remember that canine dogs live for the job, but they also need a good life beyond it." Back at home, they settled Rex on a thick blanket, giving him the prescribed meds. The dog, though still alert, didn't protest the extra pampering. Jake noticed him licking at his bandaged ear, so he nudged the dog's muzzle away gently. "No messing with that, buddy," he scolded softly, earning a subdued tail wag. Mid-afternoon, an unexpected text arrived on Jake's phone. It was from Trevor again. "Heard about your dog? Hope he's okay." Jake blinked, reading the message twice. He hadn't told any classmates about Rex's recent injury, so word must have traveled through the grapevine. He tapped back a short reply. "He's resting. Vex." Strange. How the kid who once mocked him was now checking in. The sun dipped lower, and Uncle Steve stepped out briefly to file some paperwork at the station. Jake stayed behind with Rex, finishing homework at the living room table. Every few minutes, he'd glance up, heart clenching at the sight of Rex dozing, occasionally twitching in what might be a dream or a flashback to the night's confrontation. Jake wondered what the dog dreamed about, chasing suspects or bounding free in a sunny yard with no dangers in sight. Come evening, Steve returned, a stack of folders under one arm. He sank into an armchair, exhaustion etched into his face. "Talk to the captain. They're not pushing for immediate retirement, but they're open to it if I feel it's best." His tone was subdued. "I'll make a final call once Rex recovers fully, but if we have one more close call, I might not wait." Jake nodded, a knot of fear and relief battling in his chest. "How do you think Rex will handle that?" A thoughtful sigh. "He'll handle it fine if I'm around. He trusts me to lead. Maybe we'll find a new routine, short walks, low-key training. Not every dog is cut out for indefinite service." Has done his part, proven himself time and again. Steve reached out to ruffle Rex's fur. "I'd rather have him safe at home than risk him being hurt or killed on the job." Jake felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He blinked them back, crouching to hug Rex gently. The dog licked Jake's cheek, leaning into the embrace with a soft whine. "You deserve a break," Jake whispered. "No one has the right to mess with you or put you through danger." A wave of gratitude washed over him, gratitude that the dog was still here, breathing, heart beating, albeit worn from the stress of countless calls. They ate a quiet dinner. Jake heated up some leftover pasta, while Steve brewed fresh coffee. The atmosphere in the house felt oddly comforting, though tinged with the knowledge that a chapter might be closing. By the time dishes were washed, Rex had drifted into a peaceful sleep, muzzle resting on his paws. Looking at the dog's relaxed form, Jake imagined a future where bullies and burglars were the last thing on their minds, replaced by leisurely yard romps and lazy afternoons. After dinner, Steve showed Jake an old scrapbook containing photos of Rex in his prime, training in obstacle courses, wearing a medal from a K9 competition, even a picture with a grinning kid at a community fair. "He's had a hell of a career," Steve murmured, tapping a photo of Rex posing with other police dogs. "All those times, he's never hesitated to protect people, but every hero's journey ends eventually." Jake's throat felt tight. He finally understood something fundamental. Picking on the wrong dog wasn't just about underestimating a K9's strength. It was about failing to see the dog's heart, the dedication and risks bound up in service to others. Rex had given so much of his life to keep the community safe. Now it might be time to give him peace. That night, as Jake turned in, he ran a hand through Rex's fur, silently thanking him for everything. The dog blinked up, eyes reflecting a quiet devotion that needed no words. Whether Rex stayed on duty a while longer or transitioned to a calmer life, Jake knew one thing for certain. Nothing could erase the bond forged in adversity. They'd faced bullies and burglars together, and though the cost had been high, their loyalty remained unbreakable. Lying in bed, Jake felt more at ease than he had in weeks. The fear that once haunted him had softened, replaced by a resolve to treasure every day with Rex, no matter how many or how few. Because in the end, the real power wasn't just in the dog's teeth or training. It was in the unwavering love and protection he offered, in the gentle way he'd stand by Jake's side through every threat. If the next step was retirement, so be it. As long as they walked that path together, they'd face whatever came, bullies be damned. The following week felt like a cautious return to normal. Rex's ear slowly healed under Uncle Steve's attentive care, and the bruises in his shoulder and leg subsided with time. Each morning, Jake checked on him before school, relieved to see the dog's gait steadily improving. Gone was the limp that had pained him just days earlier. Rex seemed content to lounge around the living room, rotating between dozing at Jake's feet and stretching out in a patch of sunlight near the window. At school, the hush of curiosity regarding Jake's police dog lingered, though the drama of that initial confrontation had faded. Trevor's group of friends stayed distant, offering no further harassment. On one occasion, Jake spotted Trevor at his locker, opening it with noticeable awkwardness. Rumor had it his parents had grounded him indefinitely. Their eyes met for a split second, and while neither waved, there was a fleeting sense of mutual understanding. They were done with conflict. After class let out one afternoon, Jake hopped on his bike, mind drifting to Uncle Steve's promise of a final decision about Rex's future. If the dog's medical checkup cleared him for continued duty, would Steve keep him on the force? Or would a calmer life at home be the safer path? Jake's stomach churned with conflicting emotions, torn between admiration for Rex's capabilities and concern for the dog's well-being. By the time he turned onto his street, the sun was dipping toward the horizon. He paused, noticing Uncle Steve's SUV in the driveway. A day off from duty, it seemed. Pushing inside, he called, "I'm home," and heard a muffled bark in response. A wave of relief washed over him at the sound of Rex's voice, hearty and full of energy. Jake found Steve and Rex in the backyard, where a small agility setup, makeshift hurdles and tunnels, stood gleaming in the fading light. Rex bounded over a low hurdle with impressive speed, ears pricked, tail swishing. Jake's jaw dropped slightly. Just a few days ago, the dog had been limping. Steve turned, smiling. "Hey, kid, wanted to test his mobility. Doesn't look like he's in pain anymore." As if to confirm the statement, Rex sprinted a tight circle around them, then jumped neatly through a hoop that was propped against a sawhorse. He landed gracefully, trotting over to Jake for a well-deserved pat. "That's awesome," Jake breathed, ruffling the dog's fur. "So he's recovered, basically." "Seems so," Steve replied. "The vet gave a green light for light agility work. No high-risk takedowns or intense chases yet, but he's definitely got his spark back." Jake watched Rex sniff the grass with a playful wag. For a moment, pure joy warmed his chest. "That's incredible. I was worried he'd be sidelined for weeks." "Me too," Steve admitted. He paused, expression growing thoughtful. "We do have to talk about what's next, though. The department is scheduling him for a thorough re-evaluation in a couple days. They'll see if he's fit for full service. Meanwhile, the captain asked if I'd consider letting him remain in a limited role, like search duties without apprehension." Jake's stomach tightened. "And what do you think?" Steve sighed, running a hand through his short hair. "I keep flipping back and forth. He's still got energy, talent, but do I risk another dangerous altercation? Maybe a controlled role would be safest, or retirement. I know whichever choice I make, some folks might question it." Jake reached down to scratch Rex behind the ears, searching the dog's eyes as though for guidance. The shepherd peered back, panting slightly, radiating a trust so absolute that Jake's eyes prickled with emotion. He'd probably run into danger without a second thought if it protected us, Jake realized. But is that good for him? "I get it," Jake said softly. "He can do the work, but you don't want him hurt." Steve nodded. "Exactly. If only he could tell me what he wants. But I have to be his voice, act in his best interest." They fell silent as Rex trotted to the makeshift tunnel, glancing back expectantly. Clearly, he wanted to play, oblivious to the weighty decisions swirling around him. Jake, taking the hint, crouched down. "Go on," he encouraged, motioning with his hand. With a burst of speed, Rex bolted through the tunnel, emerging with a triumphant bark. Jake couldn't help but smile. "He's amazing." "Always has been," Steve murmured, a proud note coloring his voice. That night, Uncle Steve sat at the kitchen table, sifting through documents about canine retirement policies, alternative duties, and a backlog of case reports. Rex dozed near his chair, tuckered out from the backyard play. Jake hovered around, half wanting to help, half feeling the gravity of the moment was beyond him. When the phone rang, Steve answered in a clipped tone, "Yes, Captain." "Right. The evaluation's still on. I'll confirm tomorrow." After hanging up, he glanced at Jake, who was leaning against the counter. "They'll do a final test with him. Basic obedience, response to a controlled scenario. If all's good, he could stay on in some capacity. But if they see even a hint of distress or physical limitation," he trailed off, eyes drifting to the dog's bandaged ear. Jake's chest squeezed. "Is there a chance they'll force early retirement?" Steve shrugged. "They might recommend it, but ultimately, I have the call." Though the captain's input carries weight, neither said more on the topic that evening, each lost in private thoughts. Jake retreated to his room, trying to drown out anxiety with a gaming session, but his concentration kept faltering. He ended up powering down the console early, flopping onto his bed to stare at the ceiling. The memory of bullies, burglars, and battered ears played in his mind like a montage of close calls. Rex was fully capable of facing those dangers, but should he? Eventually, if exhaustion claimed him, he awoke to daylight filtering through the blinds, stiff from a night of restless sleep. Wandering out, he found the house quiet. Steve must have gone to the station early for last-minute paperwork. Rex dozed on the couch, head lifting when he sensed Jake's presence. The dog hopped down, ambled over, and rested his muzzle gently on Jake's knee, as though greeting him with a silent, "Good morning." Jake ruffled the dog's ears. "Morning, boy," he murmured, a swell of affection in his voice. He wasn't sure if Rex's future was as a semi-retired search dog or a full-time couch companion, but he knew, no matter what, their bond wouldn't break. Rex would remain by his side, ready to protect him from bullies, burglars, or anything else life threw their way. The next 2 days blurred into anxious waiting. Steve locked in the test date, occasionally running short drills with Rex in the backyard. Jake helped, calling out the advanced commands he'd learned. The dog performed admirably: heel, stay, stand down, no signs of pain, no hesitation in movement. Yet Jake's heart pounded each time, remembering how swiftly chaos could erupt. At last, the morning of the evaluation arrived. Jake stood by the front door wearing a backpack for school but lingering to see them off. Rex, wearing his harness, bounced on his paws like an excited puppy, oblivious to the gravity of the day. Steve patted his nephew's shoulder. "We'll be fine, kid. Wish us luck." Jake gave a shaky smile, leaning down to kiss Rex's head. "Good luck, pal," he whispered. As the SUV pulled away, the dog gazed out the window with bright eyes, leaving Jake behind to attend a mundane school day, while Rex faced a test that could redefine his life. Jake hopped on his bike, pedaling toward the future with a knot in his stomach. "Whatever happens," he told himself, "at least we know no one will dare pick on this dog again. He's earned that respect." He rode off, the crisp air on his cheeks, carrying a quiet hope that this best friend of his, trained, loyal, and fearless, would finally find the peace and safety he deserved, whether in a new role or in the restful life of a retired hero. While Jake biked to school, Uncle Steve and Rex arrived at the police training facility on the outskirts of town. The early morning sun cut through lingering fog, revealing a sprawl of practice fields, obstacle courses, and a few government vehicles parked near a large warehouse-like building. Rex hopped out of the SUV with a quick shake, ears pricked, sniffing the air as though he recognized the place. "Easy, boy," Steve murmured, adjusting the dog's harness. He tried to project calm, but inside, his stomach was a knot of nerves. This wasn't just another day on the job, it was the deciding factor for whether Rex would remain an active K9 officer or step into retirement. A tall, broad-shouldered man named Sergeant Harris approached, clipboard in hand. "Morning, Larson," he greeted, offering a quick nod. "Ready for the evaluation," Steve cleared his throat. "As ready as we can be." He ran a hand along Rex's back, feeling the dog's muscles tense in anticipation. "He's healed well from that last incident." Harris consulted the clipboard, eyebrows knitting. "We've got a few tasks lined up. Basic obedience, a short tracking scenario, and a suspect apprehension test if he's up for it. That okay?" "Sure," Steve said, though the mention of suspect apprehension made his heart clench. That was exactly the kind of high-risk scenario that often led to injuries, but it's part of the evaluation, he reminded himself. They headed onto a grassy field where a junior officer waited with equipment, bite sleeves, a padded suit, and a hidden scent trail. Other K9 teams occasionally used this space for recertification drills or advanced training. Rex's tail wagged, as though excited to show off his skills. Steve tried to swallow his anxiety, kneeling to check the dog's vest one last time. "All right, let's start with a simple recall and agility," Harris said. He stationed himself at one end of the field, while Steve walked Rex to the opposite end. The plan was for Steve to release the dog, then call him back with a command testing speed, response, and immediate compliance. Steve took a breath and unclipped the leash. "Rex, go." The dog bolted toward Harris, who clapped his hands, calling out, "Come here, buddy." Rex reached him in seconds, skidding to a stop, tail wagging. Then Steve gave a sharp whistle and the command, "Here!" and Rex turned on a dime, racing back across the grass. Steve felt a flicker of pride as his partner skidded to a halt at his feet, panting but eyes bright. No trace of a limp, he noted with relief. Next came a short obstacle course, low hurdles, a short tunnel, and a makeshift wall. Rex sailed over the hurdles with ease, charged through the tunnel without hesitation, and bounded onto a low platform before jumping down. No signs of pain or fatigue. Even the nasty ear wound appeared to be healing nicely. He shook his head once, but otherwise showed no discomfort. Sergeant Harris jotted notes on the clipboard, occasionally nodding. "Looks good," he muttered. "He's showing good form, no timidness." Then he gave Steve a meaningful look. "Think he's up for the suspect apprehension scenario?" Steve's gut twisted. If we skip it, they might say he's not fit for full duty. If we do it, he could risk aggravating an injury, but Rex stood at his side, ears forward, posture poised. "He's telling me he's ready," Steve thought. Aloud, he nodded. "So let's do it." They moved to a fenced area where a junior officer waited, donning a heavy padded sleeve. The scenario was straightforward. The suspect would pretend to flee. Rex would pursue and latch onto the padded sleeve upon command, then release immediately when instructed, a classic canine demonstration. If Rex hesitated or struggled, it'd be a sign of diminished drive. If he performed well, it indicated he could still handle the demands of apprehension. Steve positioned Rex at his side, inhaling a calming breath. "Rex, heel!" The dog complied, eyes locked on the figure ahead. Sergeant Harris stood nearby, watchful. The mock suspect shouted, "You'll never catch me," then turned to run. Rex tensed. Steve waited a beat, enough to let the suspect gain distance, then gave the command, "Rex, get him!" Like a coiled spring released, Rex shot forward in a blur of muscle and focus. He caught up to the fleeing officer in seconds. The padded sleeve came up in defense, and Rex clamped onto it with a fierce grip. The suspect stumbled, but Rex's training kept him from going for unprotected areas. Instead, he held tight, growling low, controlling the suspect's movement. Steve's heart pounded. Please don't let him tweak his leg or ear. Taking a step forward, he raised his voice. "Rex down." The dog released, dropping into a perfect down position, muzzle curled but not lunging. The officer with the sleeve carefully stood, giving a nod of approval. Sergeant Harris clapped. "That's a textbook apprehension. Good job, boy," he praised Rex, who wagged his tail once, still vigilant. Steve exhaled, relief flooding him. No sign of hesitation, no sign of pain, just a clean takedown. They repeated a shorter version of the scenario to confirm consistency. Again, Rex performed flawlessly, responding to commands without missing a beat. Steve noticed no limping afterward, only a brisk shake and a pricked ear. His partner was downright eager. Even Sergeant Harris looked impressed, scribbling furiously on the clipboard. "Honestly, Larson," Harris said when they regrouped, "Rex is in top shape. I see zero indication of fear or physical limitation. If you're comfortable, we can clear him for continued active duty." Steve's mind whirled. On one hand, relief soared. Rex had aced every test. But the old worries lingered. Those multiple close calls, the injuries piling up, the bandaged ear still healing. Is it wise to push him further? He wondered. He gazed at his dog, panting contentedly, as if to say, "We nailed it, boss." In that moment, Steve realized that the official recommendation might keep Rex on the force, but the ultimate choice lay with him. He was the dog's handler, the one responsible for safeguarding Rex's future. "Thanks, Harris," Steve said, voice subdued. "I appreciate it. I'll let the captain know we'll stay on active duty for now, but we might talk about limited assignments. He didn't commit fully to indefinite continuation. Maybe we'll pick our calls more carefully," he resolved internally. Harris nodded. "Understood. If you want to place him on specialized duty, like detection instead of apprehension, just say the word." Steve knelt down, ruffling Rex's fur. "You did great, buddy," he whispered. Rex responded by licking Steve's hand, oblivious to the emotional tug-of-war in his handler's heart. "For now, we keep going," Steve told himself, "but I'll be more cautious." They parted ways with Harris, returning to the SUV under a warm midday sun. Rex hopped inside, tail wagging, as if pleased with the day's accomplishment. Steve stared at the field for a moment, memories washing over him. All the times they'd trained here, from Rex's rookie days to advanced courses, each milestone had shaped them into a formidable team. And now, in the autumn of Rex's career, they'd proven they could still handle the pressure. "Let's get home," Steve said aloud, sliding into the driver's seat. "Jake's probably dying to know how it went." A flicker of a smile touched his lips as he imagined Jake's face when he heard the good news. He'll be thrilled Rex passed, Steve thought. Then an undercurrent of uncertainty followed. But does that mean we're safe from more heartbreak? The drive back felt surreal, as though an invisible clock ticked overhead. Rex sprawled in the back seat, letting out an occasional satisfied huff. They'd won the battle, but the war against time and risk continued. For now, though, at least they had a moment of triumph, proof that even after injuries and close calls, this wasn't quite the last chapter of their partnership. Pulling into the driveway, Steve caught sight of Jake's bike resting against the porch. Jake must have rushed home from school, anticipating news. As Steve opened the SUV door, Rex jumped down eagerly, scanning the yard for his young friend. Sure enough, Jake burst out of the front door, eyes alight with questions. "Well?" he asked, breathless. "How'd it go?" Steve ruffled Jake's hair with his free hand, feeling a warmth of pride. "He passed with flying colors, kid. He's still the wrong dog for any troublemaker to mess with." Rex barked once, as if seconding the sentiment. Jake grinned, crouching to hug Rex, relief radiating from him. "Awesome!" Jake exclaimed, though a hint of concern still flickered in his eyes. "So, he's staying on the force?" Steve nodded, but his voice carried a note of caution. "Yes, but on specialized duty. No more daily frontline calls, unless absolutely necessary. The department's okay with that plan." Jake exhaled, a mix of gratitude and acceptance crossing his features. "That's good. Safer for him, right?" "Exactly," Steve confirmed. "We've got more challenges ahead, but at least we'll face them on our own terms." Rex, seemingly sensing the unity in their voices, wagged his tail so hard his hips swayed. In that shared moment, man, boy, and dog, there was a profound sense of relief and hope. They had chosen a path that balanced Rex's readiness with the caution his hard-won scars demanded. And for as long as his loyal heart beat, Rex would remain the one dog no thief or bully should ever underestimate. Sunlight pooled across the Larson living room as Jake collapsed onto the couch with a relieved sigh. Uncle Steve had just finished recounting every detail of Rex's evaluation, how the dog nailed the agility drills, tackled the suspect apprehension test with flying colors, and showed no signs of lingering injuries. Rex, in the meantime, sprawled beside Jake, panting happily as though he, too, relived the triumph. "So now he's on specialized duty?" Jake asked, leaning forward with wide eyes. "Like detection?" Steve nodded, settling into an armchair. "Essentially." The captain agreed to have him focus on low-risk tasks, drug sniffing, search and rescue, situations less likely to involve violent takedowns. It's not a full retirement, but it's a safer way to use his skills without pushing him too hard. Jake felt a surge of relief. "That's perfect. He'll still get to work, but you don't have to worry about every call being some crazy pursuit." "Yeah." Steve's gaze drifted to Rex, who was gnawing on a rubber chew toy with lazy contentment. "I'll feel better knowing he's not in the front lines every single shift, and if we see any sign he's struggling again, we can revisit retirement." Jake knelt beside the dog, patting his shoulder. "Hear that, bud? You're still official, but no more heroics. Just sniff out contraband and keep the streets safe gently." Rex cocked his head, muzzle twitching as if trying to interpret Jake's tone. Then he licked Jake's hand, tail wagging. The sight made Jake's chest tighten with gratitude. Only weeks ago they'd feared for Rex's life, facing bullies at school, fighting burglars, grappling with on-the-job injuries. Yet here he was, soldiering on with unwavering loyalty. A soft knock at the door startled them. Rex perked up, bounding over. Steve rose, motioning for the dog to stay back. When he opened the door, Jake glimpsed a familiar face. It was Trevor, standing on the porch with an awkward posture. Immediately, tension flickered through Jake's veins. Trevor was the bully who'd clashed with Rex. But Uncle Steve, noticing Jake's startled reaction, kept his expression neutral. "Can we help you?" Steve asked politely. Trevor cleared his throat, eyes flicking nervously to the dog inside. Is Jake here?" I just wanted to talk for a sec." Jake approached behind Steve. "Hey," he said, voice cautious. "What's up?" Trevor hovered at the threshold, hands shoved in his pockets. "I heard from some classmates that your dog is, like, some hero K9. And you said he was hurt before. I just wanted to say, I'm glad he's better." His eyes flicked to Steve. "Also, sorry for messing with him. That was stupid." Jake glanced at Steve, who merely raised an eyebrow and stepped aside, letting Jake handle it. Swallowing, Jake said, Thanks. He's okay now, but it was close." Trevor's face tightened with guilt. "I know. Look, man, I was a jerk, trying to show off, I guess. If your dog had, really attacked me." He trailed off, shuddering at the memory. Then, squaring his shoulders, and he mumbled, "I can see why they call him the wrong dog to pick on." Despite the tension, Jake let out a soft chuckle. "He's definitely not the dog you want to provoke." Steve, sensing the mood, laid a gentle hand on Rex's collar and opened the door fully. Rex is actually pretty friendly if you don't threaten him. Want to say hi? Trevor blinked, apprehension flickering in his eyes. But curiosity won out. He stepped inside, gaze locked on the German Shepherd. Rex sniffed the air, ears up, but made no move to growl or bare teeth. Instead, he padded closer, muzzle outstretched. Trevor inhaled, hesitantly letting the dog smell his hand. Jake saw the tension in Trevor's posture relax slightly when Rex merely wagged his tail in polite greeting. "You see," Jake said quietly, "he's not out to get you. Just don't come at him with a stick." "Right." Trevor managed a faint laugh. After a moment, he scratched Rex behind the ears, and the dog leaned in. No sign of resentment for their past scuffle. Trevor's shoulders sagged, relief washing over him. "He's cooler than I thought," he admitted in a near whisper. So Uncle Steve watched the exchange with folded arms, a slight curve at the corner of his mouth. The apology might not erase the confrontation, but it was a step. And for a kid like Trevor, swallowing pride to show up at their door took courage. Finally, the boy cleared his throat, stepping back. "Anyway, just sorry. For real." Jake nodded, crossing his arms. "It's in the past. Let's keep it that way." With that, Trevor mumbled a quick goodbye and shuffled out the door, the tension lingering only momentarily before dissipating. Steve locked up, exchanging a look with Jake. "That took guts," he commented. "Guess your dog left a real impression." Jake patted Rex's side. "I think that's the best outcome, no one hurt and lessons learned." They spent the rest of the afternoon in a light, hopeful mood. Steve busied himself finalizing some paperwork regarding Rex's new role in the department. Jake helped cook dinner, something simple like grilled chicken and vegetables, and they chatted about school, the upcoming weekend, and ways to keep Rex engaged without risking heavy strain. In the evening, Jake sprawled on the living room floor, going over basic commands with Rex for the 100th time. "Stay," he said, stepping backward. "Stay." The dog remained motionless, eyes locked on Jake's face, waiting for the release. After a few seconds, Jake smiled. "Okay, come," he called. Rex bounded forward, tail swishing. The routine was comforting, a reminder of their bond. Uncle Steve watched from the couch, drinking a cup of tea. "You've gotten pretty good at that," he observed. "Rex obviously respects you." Jake shrugged, cheeks warming with pride. "He's easy to respect back," and he said, "I mean, after everything." He pictured the moment Rex snapped a bully's stick in half, the night he fended off a burglar, and the times he'd weathered injuries for the job. Each memory pulsed with gratitude. "He's saved me in more ways than one." Steve set down his tea. "He has that effect on people," he said softly, a note of fondness in his tone. The gravity of Rex's new specialized duty hovered, but for now, they enjoyed the calm evening, letting any heavier worries fade. Rex dozed between them, content as can be. Right before bed, Jake scrolled through his messages and social media. A wave of relief coursed through him when he saw no new rumors or drama regarding bullies or break-ins. Maybe life's finally stabilizing, he thought. The image of Trevor's uncertain grin flitted across his mind, and he allowed himself a small smile. People could change if given reason enough, even the ones who'd once acted like enemies. Standing, Jake headed to his bedroom, Rex trailing behind. The dog's ears twitched at every creak in the old floorboards, hyper-aware as usual. Jake flicked off the lights, letting darkness settle. Crawling into bed, he felt Rex circle a few times before lying down at the foot of the bed, watchful and protective. In that quiet hush, boy and dog drifted towards sleep. Tomorrow would bring another day, another test perhaps. Jake couldn't know, but he had faith that even if the world remained unpredictable, they'd weather it together. No burglar could outsmart a canine's nose. No bully would dare poke fun at a dog who could demolish a stick with one snap. And with Uncle Steve's careful planning, Rex's future looked safer than ever. A lullaby of contentment wrapped around them. Jake's last waking thought was of how rarely we get second chances in life, to mend fences, to say I'm sorry, or to choose a healthier path. Rex had been battered by fate and come out stronger, forging unbreakable bonds along the way. They picked on the wrong dog, Jake mused. a drowsy smile curling his lips, and he proved he was the right dog for me. A crisp autumn breeze rustled the trees outside as Jake started his day by feeding Rex, ensuring the dog's ear bandage remained clean. Though the wound had almost healed, a pink scar was visible, a permanent reminder of the near miss. Uncle Steve had already left for work, comfortable knowing Rex was in good hands and no longer needed daily high-risk calls. With Rex's new specialized role came a more predictable schedule. Most days, he and Steve either assisted in routine drug checks or performed quick building searches, tasks typically free from high-speed chases or violent confrontations. Jake couldn't deny the relief he felt each time Rex returned home unscathed. The dog seemed happier too, still eager to please, but more relaxed without the constant threat of a life-or-death scenario. "That's good, right?" Jake murmured to Rex one afternoon, patting his flank. "You can do the job you love, without all the scary stuff." The shepherd stared at him with warm, inquisitive eyes, as though to say, "I'm here for whatever you need." The next few weeks slipped into a new rhythm. School, homework, and occasional training with Rex filled Jake's days. Sometimes Uncle Steve took the dog to the station for a standard shift, but Rex typically returned home before dark, trotting in with a wagging tail. No more late-night injuries, no urgent calls about burglaries or violent suspects. The hush around Pinewood High also continued. Trevor's group left Jake alone, and the rest of the student body seemed to have moved on to new gossip. One crisp Saturday, Jake and Steve decided to take Rex for a walk through the wooded park on the outskirts of town. It wasn't a typical patrol or a training exercise, just an outing to let the dog enjoy fresh air and gentle terrain. Wearing comfortable clothes and carrying a small backpack of water and snacks, they parked by the trailhead and unleashed Rex, who bounded forward with a burst of playful energy. Steve grinned, motioning for Jake to follow. "He's still got that spark, huh?" Jake laughed. "Totally. I think retirement would have driven him nuts. At least this specialized duty lets him keep busy." Rex stayed close, sniffing every tree trunk and patch of leaves. A few joggers passed by, offering curious smiles at the handsome shepherd, but no one showed fear. Jake realized how different the world felt now that bullies and chaos weren't lurking. The dog was simply part of the community, a reminder of safety rather than a weapon for takedowns. As they ventured deeper, the trail led to a small creek, water rippling over smooth rocks. Rex padded up to the bank, leaning down to lap at the cool stream. Jake crouched beside him, tossing a pebble into the current and watching the ripples expand. Uncle Steve found a log to sit on, sipping water from a thermos. After a comfortable silence, Steve said, "You know, I had a chat with the captain yesterday. He confirmed he's happy with Rex's performance in detection work. No major complaints from the team. They think he'll do just fine until his official retirement in a year or two." Jake exhaled, relief flooding him anew. "That's awesome. A year or two, enough time for Rex to still serve, but not be pushed to a breaking point. So no regrets about not fully retiring him now." A thoughtful pause. "No," Steve replied, half smiling as he watched the dog chase a fluttering leaf. "He's doing great, and we're taking fewer risks. This feels like the balance we needed." Jake nodded. "Remember how everything was so tense just a month ago? The bullies, the burglar. I was worried Rex might be forced to retire or worse." Steve's eyes darkened briefly, recalling those close calls. "Yeah, it was touch and go. But I've learned that trouble can strike anywhere, at school or at home. Having Rex around is a blessing, as long as we protect him too." Jake tossed another pebble into the water. The memory of that day behind the school fence flashed through his mind. Trevor's sneering face, Rex's menacing growl, the snapped stick. If any good had come of it, it was a deeper appreciation for Rex's abilities and a new respect from classmates who realized messing with a trained K9 was a fool's game. Even Trevor had shown remorse, proving that people can change when faced with the reality of real danger. And the burglar scare. That taught him how vulnerable a home could be, but also how crucial a vigilant partner like Rex was. The dog had been ready to defend them if the intruder had pushed through. Now that same dog bounded among the leaves, carefree, oblivious to the weighty decisions that had loomed over his future. Jake glanced at Uncle Steve. "I think we learned something too," he said softly. "That we owe it to Rex not just to let him fight for us, but to fight for him when he needs protection. A gentle smile curved Steve's lips. Exactly, a partnership isn't one way. He's a warrior, but he's also family. Rex trotted back, tail swishing as if drawn by their voices. Jake scratched behind the dog's ears, grinning at the contented pant. The more he observed Rex in this relaxed state, the more he realized how vital it was that the dog's life not be solely defined by danger. The specialized role was indeed a perfect middle ground, enough to keep him engaged without constant threats. They spent the rest of the afternoon wandering the trails, occasionally stopping to let Rex explore or chase the occasional squirrel. Each new step felt like a victory lap after the intense saga they'd endured. When the sun dipped low, they returned to the car, a pleasant fatigue settling over them. On the ride home, the radio played softly, and Rex dozed in the back seat, muzzle propped on the window ledge. Jake gazed out at the passing scenery, remembering how everything had changed in such a short period. "I guess that's it then," he murmured, half to himself. "No more bullies, no more life-threatening calls, just a stable routine." Uncle Steve, one hand on the wheel, offered a thoughtful nod. "Mostly, yes, trouble can always arise, but we're better prepared now. And if anyone tries to pick on Rex again," he flashed a wry grin, "they'll learn the hard way." Jake chuckled, echoing the grin. "They sure will." The phrase "wrong dog" drifted through his mind, how it had become almost symbolic of the unstoppable, loyal protector that Rex was. Yet the real takeaway, he realized, wasn't just about punishing bullies or scaring off criminals. It was about the deep bond forged between them, a testament to how trust and understanding can shape a fearless canine's mission into something more profound, a promise of mutual safety and respect. As they pulled into the driveway, Rex lifted his head, ears perked, checking his surroundings with that ever-present vigilance. But the tension of the past seemed a distant memory. In the warm glow of early evening, life felt peaceful. Once they parked, the dog hopped out, tail wagging as though he owned the yard. Jake smiled, setting a hand on Rex's back. "Welcome home, partner." And in that moment, boy, uncles, and dog stood united in a conclusion that felt less like an ending and more like a quiet, hopeful beginning. A crisp Sunday morning dawned over Pinewood, bringing families out to the annual Harvest Fair, a lively event full of stalls, music, and pumpkin-themed contests. Uncle Steve had been assigned light duty there, overseeing security alongside a handful of other officers. Though he didn't usually bring Rex to public gatherings these days, the captain requested a canine presence for demonstration purposes and possible contraband checks. Given Rex's new specialized role, it seemed a perfect match. No high-intensity confrontations, just crowd monitoring. Jake, thrilled for a change of scenery, joined them at the fair. He wore comfortable sneakers, ready to roam between cotton candy stands and local craft booths. Meanwhile, Rex strutted through the park in his official harness, calmly sniffing the air for anything amiss. A small cluster of children ran up, wide-eyed, to admire the police dog, and Jake found himself smiling as he gently explained that Rex was indeed friendly, unless you caused trouble. As midday approached, Uncle Steve stepped away to coordinate with the fair organizers, leaving Jake and Rex near the stage area where a band was setting up. The dog's ears flicked at the thump of drums, but he remained composed, tail wagging whenever passers-by offered friendly waves. Everything felt peaceful, even festive. For a moment, Jake couldn't imagine danger lurking in such a bright, cheerful scene. Then, in the distance, a muffled shout caught Rex's attention. He froze, hackles rising slightly, muzzle angling toward a cluster of booths by the tree line. Jake followed the dog's gaze. Beyond the swirl of fairgoers, he spotted two figures scuffling behind a vendor tent, one wearing a heavy jacket, the other shouting something unintelligible. A second later, a panicked voice rang out, "Stop him! He's got my bag!" Jake's pulse spiked. A thief, here in broad daylight. He tightened his grip on Rex's leash, searching for Uncle Steve, but his uncle was nowhere in sight. The crowd around them hadn't quite registered the commotion yet, many engrossed in the band warming up or the funnel cake lines. But Rex let out a sharp bark, as if signaling the presence of wrongdoing. Reacting on instinct, Jake pushed forward, weaving through startled onlookers. "Move, please!" he called, heart pounding. The tether on Rex was short, and he could feel the dog's tension surging. This wasn't a standard sit-and-greet scenario. Someone was apparently in danger. A flurry of movement behind the vendor tents confirmed it. A hooded suspect yanking a purse from a frantic woman's grasp before pivoting to run. Jake bit back a surge of apprehension. Rex is trained for detection now, not full-on chases, but the suspect dashed straight toward them, trying to slip into the unsuspecting crowd. If he got lost in the sea of fairgoers, no telling what else he might do, or if he was armed. Mind racing, Jake remembered the advanced commands. If he let the suspect barrel through, there could be injuries or panic. Could he let Rex do more than just bark? The choice was made for him when the suspect spotted Rex's harness and froze in alarm, reversing direction. Realizing escape was blocked by spectators, the thief spun, nearly knocking over a table of pottery. The woman who'd lost her bag stumbled after him, tears of frustration in her eyes. Rex growled low, poised at Jake's side. The suspect hesitated, scanning for a path. Then, in a burst of desperation, he vaulted over the pottery table, lunging deeper into the fare. Jake let out a shaky breath. This was no harmless pickpocket. He's ready to bowl people over just to flee. Another shout. "He's armed!" someone yelled, though Jake couldn't confirm. Fear knotted his stomach. If the suspect had a weapon, the risk soared. Uncle Steve, he thought, scanning the crowd in vain. Time was running out. Someone could get hurt. Clutching the leash, Jake took a step forward. "Rex, find," he commanded, voice cracking with adrenaline. The dog's muzzle shot upward, ears pivoting to lock onto the suspect's path. He's not supposed to do intense apprehensions anymore, Jake reminded himself. But the stolen bag, a panicked victim, and the suspect's aggression demanded action. They had to intervene, at least to corner him until backup arrived. Rex bolted ahead, nose skimming the ground as he tracked the suspect's fresh scent. Jake followed, weaving through startled fairgoers. Gasps erupted when people noticed the K9 in pursuit, many stepping aside. At the next row of booths, the suspect reappeared, sweat beading on his brow, clutching the stolen bag. He spotted Rex charging closer and tried to duck behind a cooking demonstration tent. Jake's heart pounded in his ears. He had no direct line of sight, but Rex was locked onto the scent trail. I have to trust him. Bursting around the corner, they found the suspect rummaging in the bag for valuables. The man jerked up, eyes wild, cursing when he saw the dog. Rex let out a fierce bark, baring his teeth in warning. That was typically enough to make most criminals freeze or drop to the ground. But this thief, perhaps fueled by desperation, grabbed a nearby metal pole from a display, raising it like a weapon. A memory of Trevor's stick flashed in Jake's mind, how it had nearly ended in chaos. Fear hammered through him, but he squared his shoulders. Rex can handle this, if I give the right command. The dog advanced, hackles high, waiting. The suspect swung the pole in a feeble attempt to keep Rex at bay. Jake's voice wavered but rang out, "Drop it! Don't move!" He'd never spoken with such authority. Rex growled, stepping closer, and the suspect faltered, eyes darting from the dog's menacing stance to Jake's outstretched arm. With a ragged breath, he dropped the pole and tried to bolt yet again. Big mistake. Rex lunged, harness straining, but he didn't clamp down like in a full takedown. Jake had not given the final "get him" command. Instead, Rex cornered the suspect against a stack of crates, snapping his jaws mere inches away, enough to make the thief freeze in terror. Jake's chest burned with adrenaline, so close to a real bite. He managed to step in, leash taut, controlling Rex's angle. "Rex, stay," he ordered, voice shaking. The dog obeyed, still growling, eyes locked on the trembling suspect. Within seconds, an older couple who'd seen the commotion rushed over, along with a uniformed officer. Another policeman jogged up moments later. Finally, back up. "Drop to the ground," the officer barked, weapon drawn. Overwhelmed, the suspect raised his hands, sinking to his knees. The stolen bag tumbled at his side. Jake stumbled backward, heart hammering so hard he feared it might burst. Rex stayed poised, head lowered, but unwavering in Jake's command. The officer swiftly cuffed the suspect, retrieving the bag. In the swirl of relief that followed, Jake could barely register the wave of onlookers, the victim sobbing with gratitude, or Uncle Steve sprinting onto the scene, panic etched in his face. Steve's gaze flicked from Jake to Rex, to the subdued suspect and back again, piecing the puzzle together. "You're okay," Steve gasped, eyes wide. Jake nodded, still trembling. Rex trotted over, pressing his muzzle to Jake's leg, as if checking that his partner was unhurt. A surge of pride and affection nearly choked Jake. They'd done it. Without a full-blown bite and without chaos, Rex had proven he could still protect even under specialized duty, as long as the commands were clear. Onlookers began to clap, some whistling in awe. The officer patted Rex's side, praising him. Even the older couple murmured, "That dog saved the day." The victim, hugging her reclaimed bag, managed a tearful "thank you," to which Jake could only nod, stunned that he'd just orchestrated a near apprehension. Uncle Steve guided them away from the crowd, heart still racing. "Kid," he said, voice husky with emotion. "You, both of you. Holy smokes." Then he knelt to stroke Rex's fur, relief flooding his features. "No one's hurt." That's exactly how a specialized canine should operate. Minimal force, maximum control. Jake laughed shakily, tears pricking his eyes. "He's still the wrong dog to pick on," he whispered, hugging Rex. The dog licked his cheek, tail wagging in a comforting rhythm. A swirl of fair staff to his officers, wangs and bystanders offered thanks, but Jake felt numb with adrenaline and gratitude. In that euphoric moment, the meaning of climax was crystal clear. Not a final violent showdown, but a demonstration of skill, loyalty, and restraint. Rex had proven, once more, that even in a toned-down role, he remained formidable, and Jake, stepping up with the commands, discovered a confidence he never knew he had. The thief was led away in handcuffs, the stolen property returned, and the fair resumed, albeit with a hum of excitement rippling through the booths. As Jake left the scene, Uncle Steve by his side, Rex at his heel, he couldn't help but feel they'd reached an apex of understanding. The dog's training, their trust, and the safe resolution of conflict came together in a shining moment. No bullies, no guns, no tragic ending, just a secure conclusion for everyone involved. And so, in the hush that followed, Jake realized that sometimes the greatest triumph wasn't in delivering a crushing blow, but in preventing one. With Rex's new specialized duty, they'd found exactly that balance, protecting people, subduing threats, but sparing themselves the heartbreak of needless violence. It was a finale that felt as grand as any triumphant victory, sealed with the gentle wag of a canine's tail. Jake and Uncle Steve spent the rest of that Sunday afternoon soaking in a quiet sense of victory. The harvest fair continued around them, music floating through the late autumn air, families wandering from booth to booth. Yet the only scene replaying in Jake's mind was Rex's flawless move to corner the thief without harming him. In a single moment, the German Shepherd had shown the world, yet again, that he was more than just a police tool. He was a loyal guardian, capable of mercy and restraint. As they headed home, Rex loped comfortably alongside them, ears flicking at every rustle of the wind. The dog's energy seemed boundless, despite the adrenaline they'd all burned. Uncle Steve watched with a proud smile, shaking his head in amazement. "You two really handled that situation well," he said, ruffling Rex's fur. Then, turning to Jake, he added quietly, "I saw how you gave those commands. Perfect timing, calm voice. I'm proud of you." Jake felt his cheeks warm. "I just followed what you taught me." "And Rex, he did the real work." "No," Steve corrected, placing a hand on Jake's shoulder. "It was teamwork. That's what being a canine handler is all about, even if you're only a stand-in sometimes." Jake absorbed the compliment in silence. The idea of stand-in handler made him grin. He used to be the nervous kid who stumbled over commands. Now he'd guided Rex through a dangerous scenario without letting fear take over. And more importantly, they'd prevented a real crime from escalating into tragedy. That night, back in the cozy living room, Jake sat cross-legged on the rug while Rex sprawled lazily, muzzle in his lap. The dog's contented panting matched the warmth in Jake's chest. Uncle Steve sipped tea by the window, phone buzzing with messages from colleagues praising Rex's quick intervention. The sense of calm after the storm felt almost surreal. "So," Jake ventured softly, stroking the smooth fur around Rex's neck. "No regrets about keeping him on duty?" "Even specialized?" Steve exhaled a slow breath, setting down his cup. "None. Today proved he can still handle threats, but in a controlled way. It's the best outcome. He's doing what he's born to do, and we're not pushing him into life or death scenarios every night." Jake nodded. "I'm just glad," he began, pausing as a wave of emotion welled up. "Glad that no one messed with him again. Or if they did, he showed he's still the wrong dog for it." They both laughed quietly at that phrase, a familiar mantra that had followed them from the schoolyard scuffle to the harvest fair. Rex blinked lazily, unperturbed by human words. Yet Jake knew the dog sensed every bit of affection in the room. The next day at school, rumors about Rex's heroic takedown at the fair spread quickly, but in a positive light. Jake's dog saved someone's purse. He cornered a thief but didn't rip him apart. For once, the talk wasn't laced with fear or mockery. It was genuine admiration. Even Trevor managed a nod of respect when their paths crossed in the hallway. Jake felt a surge of relief, remembering how close they'd come to a different, darker outcome weeks ago. By the week's end, life found its new equilibrium. Uncle Steve juggled normal shifts, occasionally bringing Rex along for routine checks, while Jake balanced homework with short training sessions to keep the dog's skills sharp. Every so often, they'd pass by the fence behind Pinewood High, and Jake would recall the bullies brandishing that stick, the flash of Rex's snarl. It felt like a lifetime ago. Now he walked those corridors without a second glance from anyone, secure in the knowledge that no one would dare start trouble. But the real transformation, Jake realized, had happened inside him. He was more confident, more secure, and in many ways, more mature. As the leaves turned from gold to brown, the town readied for winter. Rex, unstoppable as always, thrived on the crisp weather, bounding through piles of leaves whenever Uncle Steve let him out. And each evening, Jake found comfort in the simple routines, feeding Rex, practicing commands, or just watching the dog doze at his feet. It was a far cry from the tension that once hovered over them like storm clouds. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster of courage, loyalty, and second chances. If this story about Jake and his fearless canine partner, Rex, touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. We'd love to hear your thoughts. How would you handle a wrong dog situation, or what do you admire most about trained canines? Share your comments below and keep the conversation going. And don't miss out on our next video for more true-to-life tales of resilience, hope, and the unbreakable bonds that define us. Your support helps us bring inspiring stories to a community that believes in kindness, bravery, and the power of standing up for what's right. Here's to Rex, Jake, and the promise that the best guardianship happens when humans and animals work together in perfect harmony.